Welcome to the Philip Wiley Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Philip Wiley.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm very excited to have Jason Downey joining today. Jason and I had been connected on social media for quite a while and finally got to meet each other at Wildwest Hacking Fest last year for the first time. So it's really cool. He works for Red Siege, but we'll get into more details of his background and so forth and his employer. But it's one of the consulting companies out there that specialize in pen testing that I respect the most. There's like a set number of 5 different companies that I really highly respect. Trusted Sec is one of them, Red Siege, like Lairs Consulting, some other ones that are boutique pen testing firms that do some really great stuff. And so that's always impresses me, and I really follow these people. And we had not long ago, we had Tim Medine, the founder and CEO of Red Siege on. And so Jason works there, but like I said, we'll get more into what he's doing and where he works and all that. So welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was really cool to finally meet in person after so long. And after I saw that Tim came on, I figured I'd throw my name in the hat and try to come, do an episode with you as well. So happy to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on. And trying to think how we first met. Was it through Twitter or was it through like a message board or something or some forums?
I'm pretty sure it was through Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to it, right? But I've only been a pen tester, a handful of years now, and as I was trying to, actively, make my jump into pen testing, of course, like your content comes up, so I had followed you that way, and I think I'd reached out to you once or twice, and now here we are.
Yeah, I was just trying to figure out exactly when, because there's several other people that I connected with through like this one forums or message board that was geared towards certifications. And I met a few people that I went through the OSCP. We went through around the same time. They were kind of study partners, and we run into each other periodically. Except one lives in India, so I haven't got to meet him in person yet. So there's a lot of people I met on that forum, which was back. It's been about 10 years, a little over 10 years ago. So I'm not sure if that was around the time you met or how soon, but I just remember we interacted a lot, and I remember seeing the awesome news that you were going to work for Red Siege. And
yeah, it's been a wild ride. And so I don't know if I ever told you the story about how I got into Red Siege. It was like
Sure.
DerbyCon 2 or 3, and I went to a mock interview workshop, and it was right as Tim had started Red Siege, and he was my mock interviewer. And we get done with the fake interview, and he's like, "Man, you did really great. If I had a junior spot, I would hire you." Of course, in my head at the time, I'm like, well, thanks, right? Like, I appreciate the thought, but I still need a job. And a couple years later, Tim calls me. He's like, "Hey, that junior spot, I have it if you want it." And I was able to make that jump, which is pretty cool.
That's awesome and great that he remembered you and came back. I mean, not a lot of people would have done that, So that's really cool.
We had stayed in contact, kind of similar to you, right? Like, I reached out, asked him questions every once in a while. Do you have suggestions? And he saw my growth on social media, and he gave me the shot. So it's worked out.
Yeah, and one of the things too, I'm sure that your skills had a lot to play into it, but it's really interesting. And one of the things I love to see is how some of these employers are taking in consideration people's social media presence. Another good example is Serena over at Black Hills, because she was really active on social media and really made a name for herself on TikTok, and that they saw the value in that and saw her technical skills and end up bringing her on. So it's kind of cool to see that. And that's one of the things I really try to emphasize to people out there. If you're trying to break in, if you've got a social media presence, if you're sharing some things online, if you're Twitch streaming, walkthroughs on Hack the Box or Try Hack Me or something, and doing different things in the content creation space, and even like speaking at conferences and the networking, that this helps your opportunities to get a job, because otherwise you could be the best in the world, but if no one knows about you, there's no way they're going to find you.
Absolutely. I did a talk a couple off and on, the 6 things no one told me about pen testing, and there's things I learned over the years. And one of the points that I drive home is the power of your network. I call it the infosec gatekeeping triforce, where instead of power, wisdom, and courage, it's education, experience, and certifications. Right? There's a three triangles. Well, in those three triangles is a hole, and that hole is like your network, which will allow you to just zoom past all that stuff. So if people know you, if people trust you, if people see that you work hard and you're passionate, you really don't even need the other three, because you can get that once you're in the job, assuming your network allows you to get there. So I 100% agree with you.
Very cool. So before we get too far into the conversation, if you wouldn't mind kind of introducing yourself, kind of sharing your hacker origin story, how you kind of got started.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Jason Downey. I have been a full-time pen tester for almost 3 years. Before that was some blue teamy network security, nothing crazy, no threat hunting. Before that was network administration, all in some like megacorp roles. I did some telecom work for a little while. I guess my interest in information security really came, when I was a teenager, and I lived on IRC and, assorted random internet hood rat activities that, I gave up as I got older, because obviously I didn't want to cause any real trouble. And then when I found out that I could cause trouble for an actual living, AKA pen testing, I started making friends, and actually a local person took me to DerbyCon 2, and that was my first foray into information security as a career. I remember sitting in the front row and seeing, I think it was like Chris Nickerson, giving a speech or a talk. And I'm like, you do what for a living? And changed my life, started studying for certifications, went back to school, and 5 or 6 years later, I was able to become a full-time pen tester. So that's the not villain arc of my life.
Very cool. So what did your education background to get to a pen testing role look like?
It was a little longer than what I originally, I guess, anticipated and or hoped. I went to Western Governors University, which is an online based school, just because they had a curriculum that, it wasn't like a typical college. Like I didn't have to go to class from 4 to 7:30 on a Wednesday. Basically, you sign up for classes, they give you some books and say, hey, if you pass these books, you get your credit, you take your test, and you're done. So complete on my own, self-paced. I could go as quick as I want, which allowed me to sort of stay in a full-time role, and then keep working on education. They offered some certifications through that, specifically Cisco and Cisco Network, Cisco Security, CCA. They don't have it anymore. Like they've gotten rid of like that security track. It's something else. But that allowed me to jump into a specific network administration and then eventually network security role. So firewalls was like my first foray into security, which got me some experience there. I took that little bit of experience in that security piece and started more about pen testing, and then that's how I segued into this way.
Very cool. Yeah, one of the things for anyone listening to, the beauty of Western Governors University too is all the certifications that you can get that is actually included in your tuition.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think for my bachelor's and master's, right, it's like $3,000, some $3,700 a semester, and then each one of those semesters, I'm getting $300 or $400 worth of, not only certification material, but also they're paying for my exam attempts, so I didn't have to come out of pocket for any of that stuff. So they as a college are relatively inexpensive. And then on top of it, you get all these certifications too. So it checks off 2 of those 3 boxes in the InfoSec gatekeeping triangle.
Yeah. And some of the nice things about that too is some of those certs that you get may help you land a job as it is before you finish the degree. So people that are considering that, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be finished with your degree before you get into security.
Sure.
So how's it been working for Red Siege? And I know you really picked, out of all the places that you picked you to start your pen testing career, I think you chose one of the best.
I really think so. I mean, my time at Red Siege has been awesome. Admittedly, when I first started, even as a quote unquote junior role, there was still very high expectations of me right out the gate. I don't know if you're familiar with Mike Saunders, but he's the principal consultant at Red Siege, and I sort of made the mistake of telling Mike Saunders that I really preferred direct, like no punches pulled feedback. And so I pretty much got like pounded on for my first 6 months. But yeah, I was forged in fire. We learn quick or we die, and I feel like I came through okay. 'Cause I thought I was ready until I actually started the job. It was like everything I thought I knew was out the window, but the fundamentals were still there, and picked it up as I went. And now I'm able to do some really great work, and made some really cool stories along the way.
Very cool. So what all types of assessments do you do there?
So I'm primarily in the network space, internal, external. I, by accident, kind of became our social engineering expert. I guess maybe I was just born small my whole life, so I had to like learn to talk fast and I could beat up in school or something. But I just got naturally good at talking to people. So I, phishing, vishing, on-site assessments, physical social engineering. That's primarily where I'm living these days. And man, it's a lot of fun.
Very cool. Yeah. So how's that evolved? Since when I started out doing pen tests, doing network and internal and external, there really wasn't much cloud, but it's interesting how much cloud has evolved into that overall realm. So do you do any cloud assessments there along with your network assessments?
I do very little. Anytime we're doing an external engagement, we always poke at some of the cloud stuff. You know, just because we're there, and that's the time. I myself haven't done like an official, what might be like a cloud pen test only. Like I'm not doing, AWS audits or targeting GCP specifically or anything like that. It's something that I'll probably touch eventually. Once I'm done really drinking from a fire hose from the knowledge pond, but yeah, not yet.
So as far as someone is wanting to get started, are certifications required?
Required? Absolutely not. But the knowledge that a lot of those certifications teach you along the way are absolutely crucial to to what we do. Being a past network admin / engineer, I harp on that constantly. If you're going to go anywhere, not just in information security, but also the IT space overall, you should probably know some networking fundamentals, down to the basics, where if I say this is an IP range and it's a /21 and you don't know what that means, you're going to go out of scope. You're going to touch something you shouldn't. And then of course applications are built on protocols, and knowing, what protocols are where and how they interact and how they work is something that I literally touch every day in my job.
Yeah, it's some good points there. One of the things I think people need to keep in mind too, when you're getting these certifications, you need to focus on trying to learn the content and not just pass the cert,
Yes.
because too many times you see people too focused on passing that cert, even if it's like OSCP. If you're not going about it trying to learn, it's going to be more difficult to pass the exam. And then once you get through it, having the skills you need that you're supposed to gain from that certification.
Absolutely. Absolutely. From my Cisco certification specifically, yeah, half of it is Cisco proprietary, but the other half that talks about all those networking fundamentals and build, I could have found a way to just, memorize that stuff and then never actually practice it. But then how do you apply that to the real world, And if you lose it all along the way, then there was no point in having it. It might get you in the door, but then it's going to get you fired 3 months later because you don't actually know what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, you're going to be doing a ton of Googling. That's just like when
Yeah.
people ask how to get into pen testing. I always tell them that you need to know the operating systems at a system admin level, because what happens if you get a shell? Then yeah, there's Google out there, but if you have the sysadmin level knowledge, it's going to take you a lot less Googling and research to figure out how to get a foothold.
Absolutely. Those fundamentals across the board are, crucial. And I always justify it to people by in order to break something, you have to know how it functions first. Like you have to know the workings and the details and what this process is supposed to look like. And once you know that, then it's way easier to know how to break that off in the middle and manipulate it to do whatever you want it to do. And it's the idea of like, we talk about Tim and curb roasting, right? The way he discovered that was he learned how it worked. And then once he knew how it worked, like down to the minutia, it's like, oh, well, here's how we can break this, right? And it changed the industry forever.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how that works too. You take some of the Active Directory certificate services research that Harm Joy and someone else from Spectrops discovered a few a few years back, because they presented it at Black Hat, but just, some people get into studying this stuff just to learn more about it, or just during the research, and they find these vulnerabilities. So it just goes to really show that spending the time to learn it very well just goes back to RTFM, read the fine manual, makes sense. And the more you know about it, the better. It really seems like a lot of cases too. And let me know what your experience has been with this. Some people that want to get started want to jump right into learning the hacking piece, but totally skip the fundamentals, understanding the technology.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to have at least a base level knowledge of kind of a whole stack. You like you mentioned, you got to know operating systems, you got to know networking, you got to know a little bit of scripting, not a full coder, but just scripting to make your life easier. Windows, Linux, you got to know how all these things. You got to know how a web app functions. Like, what does that stack look like? Like, what is a database? How is data stored? How can you access that database remotely? Because those are things that we do every day. And I made this mistake when I was first learning, right? Where I would hop on like Hack the Box, and they would assign you a box, and every answer that you need to complete that puzzle is right there on that one machine. And the real world does not function that way. Very, very, very rarely is there just one step in a process, right? It's like we end up doing like a kill chain that's like 7 or 8 levels long. And the way that we're able to navigate these kill chains is by knowing all these fundamentals. Oh, hey, I'm on this first box. Your network's not segmented. I can access this SQL server. Oh, hey, you've got default creds. Oh, hey, because I know how SQL works, I know there's an SA. Hey, that's privileged. Hey, I'm not privileged on the box. I can dump LSAS. Hey, I've got admin credentials. That's how we get there, right? If you don't know all those fundamentals, you get way lost along the way.
And another thing, good point to kind of drill down into a little bit, is you mentioned that you're doing infrastructure, so you're doing internal and external along with the social engineering stuff. But as how important do you think it is for someone to specialize opposed to trying to learn everything? Because you can do cloud, you can do app, you can do infrastructure along with red teaming or physical and social engineering. How important do you think it is at a certain point in your career to specialize?
In the beginning, specialization definitely not important. Because number one, you don't really know what you're passionate enough about, right? Like, I can look someone in the face every day and be like, cloud is the future. You should be testing cloud. Cloud is everything. But if you don't like it and you don't care about it, you're not going to be a good pen tester at it. So get that base level knowledge, touch a little bit of everything, and then really, once you've got a hold on something that you're naturally good at or naturally passionate about, then when you're trying to go from junior to senior or senior to lead or lead to principal, then you can really specialize. Oh, hey, I'm really great at understanding Windows API calls. Let's focus there. I don't know nothing about them. I don't necessarily know that I want to know anything about them. So I don't know if I'm going to go that route yet. But yeah, that's the process. Is don't get caught up on the fine details when you're still just learning how to swim.
So what are some of your favorite resources for learning infrastructure pen testing?
Obviously Google is the number one there. There's a GitHub, hacktricks.xyz. To be honest, I reference frequently. Like, if there's a service that I'm not familiar with, I'll go to Hacktricks and I will see, hey, has someone identified this port before, and what's on it? What steps did they take to enumerate and figure out, what it does? And I start there a lot of times. Let's see, what else is there? There's a iread.team is another good resource. Bluescreenofjeff.com, Jeff.com is another good resource. And I hit those three like very frequently as I'm, working my way through networks.
So how important it is to, a lot of these environments have Active Directory. How important is it to learn Active Directory?
It's huge. The real world runs on Active Directory. Any company that can afford consultant pen testing has Active Directory. The days, like I said, with the Hack the Box, the days of just getting one box that has all your answers and then also their HR database and also it's not like that in the real world. We live and die on Active Directory, and learning the fundamentals and how those pieces talk to each other is mission critical.
Yeah, very cool. I think this is a piece that people overlook. And I noticed recently that, I guess last year sometime, that even the OSCP is starting to include Active Directory on it.
Absolutely. I was talking to someone who was excited about the industry, and they said they were currently in an Active Directory role, but they feel like that's a dead end for them. I'm like, no, man, no. Maybe at like whatever corp that you're at right now, managing Active Directory is like the peak of that aspect of your business. But security wise, if you're an Active Directory expert, you're tearing places apart. Like if you can tell us more than a Bloodhound output does, and then be able to exploit it, like you're worth millions. You are important. Like apply at Red Siege. Let's do this.
Yeah. Another thing to look at too, as far as Active Directory, you've got Trimark out there. That's basically,
Yeah.
most of what they do.
Yep. I mean, they're Active Directory full audits, right? And Jim Sakura, he hops on our Wednesday offensive, and he's always dropping knowledge. Like I can't tell you how many times that dude has spoken, and I have like actively taken notes, right? Like it's good knowledge, and Active Directory is so important to all these big businesses, but so I guess not fully understood by anybody outside of Microsoft, right? So like we're learning it at the same time that the blue team is learning it, and it's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. I can remember back when Active Directory just started, because when I started back in my sysadmin days, there are only two directory services out there. Banyan Vines was the very first. Then Novell NetWare, they had directory services, Novell Directory Services, or NDS, and that was kind of the beginning. And I remember at the time they were the most popular. And then once Microsoft got Active Directory, then that just really eventually killed off anything Novell NetWare was doing, because they just weren't really progressing with the times. And it's kind of interesting because one of my sysadmin friends at the time, he had started focusing more on learning Microsoft, because he went to, I think they're in Provo, Utah, is where Novell's headquarters used to be. And he went there one time and he was talking to Eric Schmidt, and Eric Schmidt ended up going on to be like a CEO of Google. But he was asking them, how are you guys going to compete with the marketing of Microsoft? Because Microsoft put a lot of time and effort into marketing. They used to give away a lot of product just to get people on their email system. They'd give away Exchange and Outlook just to get people into their full stack. And he was asking them, what are you guys gonna do about it? And you could he saw the writing on the wall. He said, our product's so good, we don't need to do anything. The best is, people see it's the best and use it. And so there, Novell, I don't think no longer exists. So
yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, Microsoft, I guess, is king, right? It's like Windows is on like 95% of corporate infrastructure machines. Like it's everywhere. Yeah. If Microsoft was like, hey, we're releasing network products, then Cisco would go out the door. Like it just.
Oh yeah.
They're monsters. Like they own stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. They did pretty well in everything except for the MP3 players.
I think I had a Zune at one point in my life. Yeah. I think I had one. Yeah.
But they've had probably a 90-something% success rate on most of the things they do. So absolutely. Yeah, you figure most environments nowadays you're going to either see Windows or maybe Mac, but not as much Mac as you see the Windows.
Yeah, Mac is very rare. I think we've had like maybe one client in the last 3 years whose staff was all Mac. Typically those are very edge cases. We've got graphic design department that has some Mac, or a C-level that has some Mac, and we gotta, because he's C-level, bend to his needs, but almost never in mass deployment is anything except for Windows.
Yeah, because I remember when I was first starting in pen testing back in 2012, we tested a school district, and they happened to have it. But at that time, they were one of the rare cases I saw any kind of Mac outside. You mentioned like maybe a graphics department within a company.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as networking and stuff, because you mentioned that, so what are some good opportunities for people to leverage to build their network and help them in getting jobs?
Definitely like use the internet, like not just for Google, but do some social media, hop on some Discords, and just start asking questions. Find folks that are like-minded in the same scenario that you are, share information, have conversations, and leverage that to, build a network, assuming you have nothing local. Like if you do have something local, find your DEF CON group, look for a hacker meetup, make friends, and it's like I said, had I not randomly sat down at a conference with, Tim Medine, CEO of Red Siege, would I be an employed pen tester today? I mean, I would hope so, but maybe not as in a great spot as I am now. It's like that network is really everything.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think that's the way we connected, and how we connected with a lot of others in the industry. But the nice
Sure.
thing about when you're building that network up, when you finally get to meet in person, you go to conferences, at least you're going to run into people there if you really spend your time building up that virtual network.
Absolutely. And like you mentioned, like that doesn't go away. Like just because you're excited and new, like you don't stop making friends then. In the beginning, you kind of mentioned there's a couple different, boutique pen testing firms that, you all speak highly of. And fact of the matter is we all speak highly of each other too. I mean, we're
Mhm.
constantly sharing techniques, tools, procedures. We can't just live in a small Red Siege silo and expect to survive. Like Nick's geek, like I went, at Trusted Sec, went and watched his talk at DEF CON and was like, oh, this is so cool. Like I'm going to use this stuff, and yeah, we give back to each other. Like we grow, we learn from each other, and that hopefully is never going to stop.
Yeah, hopefully so. And one of the things I love to see about it, because coming from a sysadmin background, and hopefully, I don't know how IT is, since I got out of IT and into security back in January 2004. But I remember there were so many people that would not share with others because it was like job security. But the thing I don't ever understand about that
Yeah.
is, if you go that route, you're doing the job security thing. You're not going to teach anyone else. What are you going to do when you need to go on vacation, or
Right.
you need to take time off for something? You're the only one anyone can depend on. So it's just not a good thing. But one of the things I've loved since moving into security, and the more I got connected to folks on social media and at conferences, is just amazing how willing people are to share. And even some people you take someone at the top of their game, like Tim, and they're willing to share with others, is really amazing.
Absolutely. And of course, with any industry, right, there's always a couple rock stars. There's a couple people that are just too busy to ever address you as a person. But the vast majority are not like that. Like never be scared to just DM somebody and say, hey, I have a question, right? Like obviously do your research. And if you can get a quick answer without bothering somebody, please take that initiative. But like, hey, I want to do this. Do you have any pointers? And chances are they'll give you one, or they might even already have a list of everything ready to go. Um, don't be afraid, right? The worst they say is no, and you can just ask somebody else. I know me being naturally extroverted, it's very easy for me to say, go to conferences and shake hands, right? But you'd be surprised how many of us are actually a little bit awkward and don't exactly enjoy the social interaction and are also introverts ourselves. And you'll find a lot of like with other folks in the industry if you're worried about being an introvert and getting out there. And there's a lot to accommodate that. There's ways to make that work, and please don't be afraid, and let's do it.
Yeah, it's great that you mentioned that, because one of the things, I was having a discussion with someone recently, and the topic of CTFs come up. And so it seems like if you're introverted and you need to find your group, your tribe, that a lot of cases, some of the people at the conferences are off in the room or off in the corner doing the CTF. And, that might be the group that you relate to more.
Sure. And yeah, I've been at conferences, and like I said, easy as an extrovert, right? But be like, hey, I'm working on the CTF. I see you're sitting by yourself. Do you want to work together? And I've actually never had anybody tell me no, right?
Mhm.
And not always the greatest experience, but you always learn at least something from each other, right? Like you're able to just trade a little bit of nugget of information that could last you a very long time. Like you never know how far that goes.
Yeah, just back to those connections, because the whole networking thing. Because now when I look back throughout my career in security, there's only been a couple of cases that I had jobs where I actually applied for jobs. The rest of them were people that were referrals.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much 100% of our hiring at Red Siege these days. We're not big, but we're still steadily growing, and we don't really have to ask for open applications because we each one of us already work there, already have a list of great people that we through the grapevine know are looking, and we could just call them and say, hey, do you want to interview? Let's see if it's a good fit. That network, like I mentioned, it's key. Like
Yeah.
it's how to get ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of the things I've seen with some of my former students and people I mentor, the ones that really focus on networking or even volunteering and stuff, have the easier time finding a job than someone that's out there applying hundreds of jobs a week, they have a
Absolutely.
better chance.
And and I don't mean to kind of make it lean on you have to be in like the cool kids club to necessarily be a pen tester, right? Because a lot of what we do, NDAs, we got to sign those. We're dealing with client data, all of their secrets, things that if I worked with a client and handed what I found to an actual bad guy, then I'm now the source of the breach. So there has to be like that trust between people, that is this person going to not only do a good job, but do a good job and still be able to protect, our client data. If I do something stupid and I get hired and I get fired from Red Siege for, putting customer passwords on the internet, and I go apply at like Black Hills, John Strand's going to call Tim and be like, "Hey, why'd you fire Jason?" Right? I'm not
Mhm.
getting that job, So having that trust and knowing that somebody is not going to be, malicious is worth a fortune. Like it's mission critical.
So yeah, it's been great having you on. Is there anything that you'd like to share before we close out this episode?
No, otherwise, keep doing great work. I really like the stuff you put out, and I hope people keep following you along. Had I been coming into the game now, I would definitely, read your book from cover to cover all the time and watch all these podcasts. And I don't have the time now, but if I was still young and ready to go, I'd be ready for it. So keep doing good work.
Thanks. I appreciate it. And same to you. I like the stuff you guys are doing there. And it's great for people like yourself with experience to take time to share with others, because some cases, one thing, anyone listening out there, if you'd like to mentor, you want to help people, but you're, someone's really busy like yourself, you can do things like this, or you can, do things from time to time. It doesn't have to be full time, and every little bit you do is helpful.
Sure. Yeah, I guess my last little piece, I will speak to pretty much anybody as long as I've got time. So even if you're catching this podcast, 2 years down the road, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Hack and Backpack. If I'm still at Red Siege, you can email me at jason@redsiege.com. I will try my best to answer any questions within reason that somebody sends me. So consider me another resource, internet stranger.
Very cool. And we'll be sharing Jason's social media information there, so you can get in touch with him. So thanks again, Jason.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Good talking with you.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to The Philip Wiley Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Philip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter @Philip Wiley. Until next time.